to call the Village of New Glarus Board meeting to order. Say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please have all cell phones silenced during the meeting. I look for an approval of the agenda.
So move.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Item 5, public appearances and citizens' comments. There's no one here, so we'll move on to item 6, approval of the consent agenda.
I'll move approval. Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Item 7, Finance and Personnel Committee. Item 8, discussion consideration amendment to Resolution 1942-2020 wages. Great.
The attached resolution is amending the resolution that was adopted by the board at the end of 2019 for 2020 wages. The only change is it's increasing the utility office manager's wages by $1 per hour. That change came about as when the deputy clerk was hired, it was at a higher wage due to the experience, and there are similar job duties and responsibilities between the office manager and the deputy clerk. And then the Finance and Personnel Committee, after reviewing the change, and they determined the internal equity justified the increase due to the similarities between the positions, and recommended approval of the change. So it's a change of $1 per hour, and that is split among the 4 separate utility funds, and so the impact on each fund is relatively minimal.
I did have a question about that, but then I read your letter to the board, so that explained it.
I would move approval of resolution R19-42.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, discussion consideration resolution 20-03/2019 budget amendment. That's on page 8.
This resolution formalizes the changes that or the non-budgeted expenses that were made in 2019. So anytime the village board elected to use fund balance, the auditors prefer to have a formal budget amendment to finalize those changes. So it's just a bookkeeping resolution.
And I got overzealous on the bottom, and Finance and Personnel approved it minus the vote. Because that should not have been included on the resolution until after it happens.
Right.
The roll
I was
call.
gonna
Oh, okay, I
say,
thought, wow.
that was exactly, how did we already say that? So,
Yeah, I
My
was so nervous
memory is
about
failing.
including the roll call that I got a little.
Yeah.
Just
trying to get, just trying to move things along. Yeah, good, okay. But I did have a question, because I wasn't here in February, and I was surprised that back in February of 2019, so a year ago from now, you guys you had another feasibility study done on the village hall?
It's probably the one you are thinking of, and that's just when it was paid. This
Oh,
one, that's
okay,
just when the board authorized the expenditure.
okay, all right, I was just like, okay,
I would make a motion to adopt the resolution 20-03-219 as a budget amendment. Oh, it's a roll call.
We'll still need a second.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, Lynn, you want to do the roll call, please?
Roll call, Michael Bell,
Yes.
Michael Gantry.
Yes.
Peggy Cruz. Tammy Newberry.
yes.
Chuck Phillipson.
Yes.
Peter Strike.
Yes.
Roger Trutman.
Yes.
Just because of the
Motion carries. Okay. Item B, C, I'm sorry. discussion consideration resolution 2004/2019 budget carry forward to 2020. Page 9.
This is a resolution that carries forward 2019 budgeted items that were not expended in 2019, but will still have to be paid in 2020. So an example is the roof ended up not being completed in the fall, so we'll still use the funds that were budgeted in 2019 to pay for that expense.
And then the diving board wasn't installed in this year.
Correct. And then the wage study wasn't paid because it wasn't completed.
Because it wasn't completed, right? So is the diving board going to be able to be completed this year, or?
Yes, it will be installed.
Because typically, I remember with donations, do they not have to approve that the donator, the person donating, that if it didn't get done in the year that they donated?
I think that they were aware of when it was going to be installed.
Okay.
That-
The donation occurred after the pool closed.
Oh, it did,
Yeah.
okay, all right, that makes sense then, okay.
On the approval of resolution R20-04.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carried. New board business. Consideration discussion of Board of Police Department renovation design administration contract to Angus Young. Okay.
This is authorizing staff to enter into the contract for the design of that renovation will be happening this year. Chief Boldebuck sought proposals from different firms, ended up getting 2 back from Dimension 4 and Angus Young. Myself, Lieutenant Sturdivant, and the chief interviewed both of them, and Angus Young provided both the best, had the better interview, and also was the low proposal by a significant amount, over $13,000. So the Dimension 4 was over $30,000 for their proposal. Angus Young came in at $16,800.
Was there any big differences between the 2 contracts proposed here? Because I'm reading through the 10 pages here, you know, it's pretty standard for like minimum of 2 million, maximum of 4 million for personnel injuries. Is there anything hugely different between those 2 contracts?
Between the two firms?
Yeah.
Angus Young has more in-house materials, which is why I anticipate why it was cheaper. Dimension 4 would have had to contract out some of the engineering that would have been required.
Okay.
Other than that, it's a pretty standard agreement with an architect, and like I said, I think that Angus Young had a more prepared and well thought out presentation when they came to the meeting.
Where are they from?
Angus Young is
Janesville.
Oh.
They just built the new Belleville PD, the police department up there. They were the architects. They're doing another one for the Dane County Sheriff's Department up in the village of Windsor. And they've done a lot of government type buildings.
I'm assuming Belleville was happy with working with him, or having...
Oh yeah, very happy. Actually, Drake and I went up there and met with the chief, Michael Grout, and walked through and looked through and everything, and I agree with everything he said. I mean, the price-wise, they were spot on. I mean, they had a temporary draft diagram done and everything like that, and he was really on the ball like he wanted the business, so I think it's a good choice.
When we do that reconstruction or renovation, will we do anything with the exterior walls, or are those be just tuck pointed, and is the entire bid just for
It's
the interior? Okay. But everything else on the outside is sound?
maybe a little bit something to the door, the doorway entrance, but the exterior walls aren't.
Or okay.
Maybe replacement of windows.
Yeah, a couple of windows are gonna have to get changed out, the door's gonna get changed around, the entrance is gonna get changed around. You know, there's just other than that, it is what it is on the outside. Quite honestly, we don't sit on the outside, we sit on the inside, so I'd rather concentrate on that and go,
Yeah,
you
and
know.
it looks sound, I just wondered if there
Oh,
was
right.
anything structurally that you had to do exterior wise, but I guess it looked fine.
No, I think there might be one or two little things, but really nothing major. That's gonna change the looks of anything.
So you'll be able to operate while the construction is going on in the facility?
Well,
That'll come up as we move through the plans. There's a few possibilities that come up. There's been talk of the department rotating throughout construction zones. If that's not possible, then the chief and lieutenant are considering temporary, depending when construction happens. They've tossed around maybe if they could work out of rooms in the school, if the construction occurred over summer, and then if, as a last resort, it would have to come to the board for approval, would be expending funds for a temporary trailer if we couldn't find temporary accommodations and if we could not, if they couldn't work in the space while it was under renovation.
Make a motion to go ahead and accept that bid.
Second.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item B, consideration discussion regarding application for special event permits.
So we have, I apologize, it didn't print in color, so it's difficult to see the changes, but if you could compare it to the old one, you'll see it's more spaced out. There's more, it's to make it clear for review and for the applicant. And the format of it could continue to change as we work with applicants and the chamber to see if it works for them, if it's becoming more clear. Becca has already offered me some insights on changing a few wordings of a few things and things such as that. The piece I thought the board would be interested in and would want to weigh in on is the, right now, if you look at the second paragraph on the front page of the application on page 25 of the packet, you'll see that right now it says that the application must be received a minimum of 2 months before the event date. If it's received less than 2 months, it's charged a $150 late fee, and an application will not be accepted if it's submitted less than 3 weeks prior to the event. So I know there have been conversation among board members that some wanted the late fee, and then others wanted to simply reject it outright if it wasn't presented prior to a deadline. So if the board has any inclination as to whether the late fee, the size of the late fee, or whether a late fee is not the avenue we would like to pursue and would instead just turn away applications that were less than 2 months, submitted less than 2 months prior to the event. And then it also does say that we won't accept it earlier than 6 months because it causes administrative issues, efficiency issues if people start jockeying for submitting an application a year in advance. It's difficult for staff to plan out that far ahead.
So there, when you explained it in your letter, and now I'm not finding that, but I thought you said that we weren't gonna do it more than 4 months, but in here it says 6 months, so I just want to make sure that
It would be,
we
do
are.
you remember?
The note said 4 months.
Oh, yeah.
The note said 4 months, the,
Meeting notes.
this says 6
I
months, so I
wondered
just
too
want to
which
make
one.
sure which one,
Mhm.
that we're comfortable with which one you choose. If you want to do,
Do you remember what our conversation was?
I don't, I was thinking 6 months all along.
I believe my notes are the ones with the typo, so. it'll be
Okay.
the-
So
this makes sense.
yeah, I think I'm better with 6 months too, I'm fine with that, I just wanted to make sure, because I noticed that difference. And then, I was curious as to why you crossed out that it would go like to the Public Works and Public Safety meeting first.
So that was, it still will go to those first, but that was, That was giving them a timeline that was more confusing, so if we received it at least 2 months
Okay.
prior, we would be
Then they
able to,
don't
we would be
need-
able to get it through that review process.
Then they don't need to know what that process is, they just need to know they
It
have.
caused, it caused some more confusion, because they were thinking if they got it to us before, just before that meeting, that was enough time, when in reality, staff reviews it prior to it
Okay.
going on an agenda.
Okay.
And so it was causing more confusion than it was actually clarification.
Okay, no, that works for me, I just wanted to make sure that we hadn't changed the process, because it always seemed like that was an important step,
It's also
so.
stated in the last page under notice to applicant that it will be reviewed by the Public Works.
Where?
Public Works Public Safety Committee for the recommendation, on page 31. So I
No,
thought
to
it was just
applicant.
redundancy.
Okay, so it was a
Eliminated,
redundancy.
which is fine, yeah.
And it will still go before parks if they are using a park.
Right.
So we will have that clarification.
Okay.
Okay.
Bert, you had some comments?
Yeah, I had a question out of the 6 months, because a lot of these events are bigger events, and these people have to reserve bands and stages or help or everything like that. So I guess my question from working with them and talking to them for like the last 8+ years is it really fair? I mean, because if some of these bands, they book a year out and they, for the whole thing, so I guess I'm wondering, take like the Grace Church or Beer, Bacon and Cheese or Oktoberfest, where they have to line up those bands. Is that kind of hindering their operations a little bit? Because I know like they try to book Boogie and the Yo-Yos for Oktoberfest every year, but they have to, I know from talking to Susie in the past, that they have to make those commitments now, and you can't book a band 6 months out. I don't think you can book food trucks 6 months out, because they're all doing weddings and corporate events and other things like that. So I guess that's my only question, and unfortunately nobody else is here, but I know from working with them, I think 6 months isn't really fair to some of those, and those are substantial investments.
I know Becca has reviewed it, and I know in the past she had said that they don't have it planned out too far in advance for a lot of their items. So 6 months, she didn't indicate to me that 6 months would be an issue.
So what I thought what the major problem was is that they were getting them in like the week before, or the one, I mean, like if they were getting them into us that late, they weren't that worried about it then.
Oh, I completely agree with what you're saying on the short notice stuff. I mean, and one particular one comes to mind that drops it off, 2 days before, the meeting, and nobody's gonna see it.
Right.
But I'm thinking for these bigger events, and I think with the Fest House, and you're gonna have more events, but I'm just thinking 6 months is really short, and those promoters of the Grace Church, and I understand the Grace Church is kind of, with the passing of the pastor this week, is probably not even aware of this, but I know.
Well, the Grace Church is actually, because they've been in a couple of times asking about their event, and we did put it on the calendar so that the Village Park is reserved for the weekend that they want it reserved. One of the other things we've talked about with Grace Church is, last year, I think it was, they applied very early. And then they had several changes as they continued their planning. So part of the reason we set the 6 months is so that they have all their stuff together and know exactly what they want to do. Because part of this is, we're not going to accept changes either. I mean, we wouldn't, it comes through here once, and then we don't want them to come in and say, oh, now we have to change this, and then we bring it back to you again, and we bring it back to you again. So part of it was that they had everything in order when they did come. And we did accommodate them by saying, we reserved Village Park for that weekend for you. We're not, we won't book anything else over it, so you have your dates.
And I think that's being fair, but like I said, at least they know that we've got the park. We can do all our stuff for 6 months, and at that 6 month deadline, we have to get our ducks in a row. There's not gonna be any changes. I understand all that, but I think then if that's what you're gonna do, whether it's be for Beer, Bacon and Cheese, or, the tractor or whatever, or the downtown Oktoberfest, I think those event people should be able to at least pencil us in for this weekend, and we'll submit our application 6 months prior to the date. But at least then they know they have that venue for those days. And I don't think it's going to be I think the 3 things: Oktoberfest, Beer, Bacon and Cheese, and the Grace Church. I think that's your three heavy hitters that need to know, because they're the ones that have to get the stages to help, they gotta line up the entertainment, they gotta do this. They're volunteers, the whole shebang, at least they know they can reserve those days in advance. And likewise for me too, because it's nice to know, if I can say at the first of the year, when the schedule comes out, don't bank on these 3 weekends on getting off, because you're not gonna get off, because there's those 3 big events.
Is that how you've worked it in the past, Chief? Is they come to you and see if that particular weekend is available?
The officers?
Well, to you or the officers?
No, they just go
the
through,
department?
the people requesting it, who we work with very closely during all these events, they have to fill out the process and we know ahead, because usually, like Becca will give us the schedule of events for the year. When
Yeah.
January comes out, we have all the events that everybody gets them, even if they're tentative, that this is Oktoberfest weekend, this is that weekend, and this is the Grace weekend. Even if they're tentative dates, at least people know, you know, I mean, Mike knows that I'm gonna get a premium on those hotel dates on these dates. He knows that a year in advance. The Swiss Air knows that, the bread and breakfasts know all that. But
So that's what they have been doing in the past, is letting the department know when their festivals are coming up, and you kind of delegate that weekend?
yes, for me, when we have those big events, I typically don't give officers any time off on those
Okay.
3 weekends, myself included. I'm at every one of those events
Okay.
myself, and have been since I've been here. But, you know, so those officers, we call it like a red letter day. It means you can't, you know, don't take a vacation on those, because you're not gonna get off. Now, if we get closer and we can supplement it or backfill with other options, then we can do that. But usually, no, they know those weekends in advance, and so that's all I'm saying is, I think it's, if you can come up with something where at least they can reserve it, 6 months later, get up to the, I understand the changes, it's a pain in the butt for everybody, I get all that, but I think they still have to be able to.
So what you're
So-
saying is we need some language in here to talk a little bit about the tentative schedule? You know, I mean, I don't know.
Can-
Some of
can
the
we
big,
just-
They come in.
Can I say reminded in anything that's in the
This
New
has
Glarus
been
magazine,
happening
any of
in
those
an
dates
ad
that are
hoc
set in there?
way. They've set their calendar without checking with us first.
I think if they anticipate,
Already.
if they're really worried about reserving the space, they have in the past let us know when they want the space. I'm not sure if we want to encourage people to try and go schedule, start their application process earlier. We can certainly, I mean, we've never, when people have come in and said, we'd like to turn in your application, we've told them we're not quite ready to accept an application that far in the future. We haven't told them, no, you can't reserve your space yet. So we can make that known to applicants. We would, after the board's weighed in on this, we'll be sending it out to the people who we have contact information for that applied for a special event last year.
What if,
For them, so that they're aware of the new form.
so what if someone comes in like 9 months, 10 months ahead of time and says, we've already set the date for beer, bacon, and cheese? Would you then put that tentatively on your calendar? Or would you wait until that 6 month?
No, we would put it on.
You would put it on.
Grace Church is already on our calendar for this
So,
year.
but this is just the
Yeah.
finalization.
Oktoberfest should already be on their
They
calendar.
publish
too.
dates
Yes,
for all
well,
these
yeah.
things, yeah.
And you know, the chamber guide comes out, what,
Right.
and that's got them
In
all in there
January.
anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
so they're all,
Exactly.
So it
Dated,
sounds to me
that's-
like
they're
there
there.
really
So-
nothing
Come
needs
in
to be
just
done
months later.
Well-
in the way of this
they're
lettering for
handling.
I think
application.
what the chief is trying to argue is that, you know, by limiting it to 6 months, you know, so when we're starting off brand new year, 2020, the last full weekend of September is gonna be your Oktoberfest. That is set in stone every single year, all the time. And the chamber can't come to you guys right now and say, can we apply for Oktoberfest right now? Because that's beyond that 6-month period. But I feel like if we got in the lettering or the wording of this permit application, the main focus should go to those events that have been put into New Glarus' magazine. So anything that has those set dates, those schedules or anything like that, those should have first priority for event permit applications. If we throw that in there, that should take care of that issue that we're talking about right now. Questions? a lot of confused eyes.
Then I had another question. Do we have language for, let's say, for example, 6 months come up and an event is approved, and then maybe something very significant might happen, like the hours the band is going to be there, or is there some language in that if you have to make a change, an emergency change of sort, or is that not?
Oh,
Go ahead.
I said I mean, the board can choose to allow changes to a permit. There's nothing that would this wouldn't prohibit them from doing so.
This would not prohibit a change?
I don't think so.
I don't
It's not something we would want to
Right.
necessarily encourage.
Right.
We'd prefer them to have their event thoroughly planned out before the village board says yes or no to issuing the permit. But they would always have the ability to address their village board to seek relief from something. We wouldn't stop them from seeking an audience with their local representatives.
Okay.
I just have a strange thought here too, though. When like you said that the Grace Church has already reserved the park and everything for their weekend, and that's all good, but how, if they're doing that quickly, what if after an event like that occurs, we as a village board do have concerns about that event? I'm not saying that I
Denying the
do.
permit?
But what if, I mean, like, there probably needs to be some, like, what if we did have concerns? We don't, I'm not saying that at all, but what if we did? I mean, what if after beer, bacon, and cheese, there were a lot of, I mean, what if? I mean, we don't seem to have any, it sounds like they're automatically, like, renewing all of this already, and then the permit comes after we've already made the commitment.
Well,
It's kinda like-
we're two different, I think we're talking about two different things here.
That's where I'm getting
If you reserve
confused
the park,
too. Right,
fine.
Right.
You reserve the park, that doesn't
Okay.
mean that you can,
do whatever you
that
want
doesn't
in the
mean
park.
that you can go ahead and do whatever you want to do
Okay,
in that park. So the reservation, the timeline is there, and
Right.
then the rest of it follows under the,
but if they've already made a commitment to entertainment and everything like that, it does seem like the permit's kind of like lagging. Am I the only one that's confused?
I think we're
Making
not
too much out of
considering the
this?
responsibility of the parties applying for these permits
Right,
as being responsible for their share
right,
of what their application is going to say.
right.
They've been in this long enough, the ones we're talking about,
Right.
they know the score.
And we kind of
so
already know what's
If they
gonna
reserve the
come.
park, it's no different than if I reserve the
Right.
park, but I can't go put on a festival just because I reserved the park. I have to get a
Permit,
permit for a festival.
right.
So I think that it's two separate things, and I don't see that they're in conflict with each other.
I think what this whole process is trying to prevent is putting committees and ultimately the board in a position where they're approving things on contingency of something. Contingency on receiving the adequate insurance, contingency on
Okay.
departmental review, because there's been times where we've gotten it with not enough time for all the departments, the police department, fire department,
Right.
to weigh in, and
So
so.
that was my thought is that the concern was all of this was coming in too late. But why are we throwing in there, we don't want it more than 6 months prior? That's the part that I guess is,
I think because if say someone put an application in a year before and the board approved it with a year to go still.
The application.
The application. There's a lot of time in there for circumstances to change and for something to come up that maybe wasn't considered before.
okay,
And then there's also time for it to be forgotten over a year, and then all of a sudden you remember, well, Grace Church is up, and it's not, the timeline has been so spread out that it's not at the forefront perhaps of the mind of the departments who have to be
so
responding.
it really is two separate things. I mean, we know and understand that these events that we are pretty all accustomed to now are coming. And the permit itself is just the final details and the agreement, and, okay.
The final approvals.
The final approvals.
For festival.
So,
type
so then this,
Special event.
right, so
I mean,
then,
if you remember, a lot of the
Right.
approvals were, like you said, Drake, when we approve a festival, it was contingent upon insurance, contingent upon, so
Right.
you're
And then
trying to
it's-
do away with
It's
that.
also led to circumstances where it's approved contingent upon something, and then 3 days before the event, staff is still trying to chase down a
try the
certificate of insurance.
contingencies,
That
right.
happens probably
Okay.
more often than not.
Well, that's what I thought the problem was that everything was running so short, people were asking for
And then we're in a
stuff so
position,
late.
then we're in a position to tell the organizers, you know, hey, you didn't get your certificate of insurance to us, we can't allow this event to occur. So
Okay.
either in shutting down the event at a last minute notice or allowing it to go forward without the protections that the board had previously decided we should have in place before allowing
So-
such an event.
So primarily, I thought the reason why we were rewording this was to stop the short.
I think that is,
But then we've also decided to put, too long out because we don't want them to be so far ahead that then they forget.
so far ahead that you
everything
can't maybe adequately, if it's so far ahead that you can't expect that it's been adequately reviewed,
Right.
that they have all of their details
That they
in a
have,
row.
okay.
Um,
Right.
And we've had that situation happen where it was applied for a year ahead and then changes had to be made like 2-3 times.
Right, and that's,
So we're just trying to prevent that from happening again.
okay.
And I get that, and the only thing I'm suggesting is that who's ever doing it should have some mechanism to reserve the
They
day.
should have some sort of guarantee that the space will be available.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah,
And that's happening.
And then we, certainly, we agree. I think
Yeah.
we'll definitely make sure.
And I agree with what you guys are saying, because we go through the same changes as you do, so I completely get that, but in fairness to those bigger ones, and I think we're all on the same sheet of music, that beer bacon, it's beer bacon and cheese, the Family Fest, and Oktoberfest. Those are really the 3 big ones, and in fairness to those guys, I think they should know that the last weekend of September is theirs for the downtown, and the Grace gets theirs, and that's really all I brought up for that was.
Yeah, because we've already had to bring the application with an amendment directly to the board without going to committee already, because it's come in so late that we had to bring it right to the board and get approval. Huh?
That's why we're doing
Yeah.
Right.
it. Just for clarification, which was the misprint? Your,
The 4 months was the misprint, the 6 months is
okay,
Yeah.
yes. And then some other things that have come up, there's, like the chamber had a couple questions for me, such as when it's alcohol use, you'll see it says plastic only. They wondered if an exception should be put into the application for glass, since there's the Oktoberfest steins that they use. I indicated to them that further exceptions to that, I didn't anticipate a board would be approving allowing glass. Oktoberfest is kind of that special. It's something unique to that event, so I did try and avoid putting exception requests into this. Obviously, they could always request an exception to a policy that's in there, but I did avoid putting those options in there because I thought that may have invited requests for exceptions. So, and I let her know that it doesn't mean that they could not have their glass steins because it's traditionally been accepted, but that it wasn't.
Kind of grandfather.
Yeah.
Because the beer bacon and cheese is the same way, they just get those little glasses that they go around and they rinse them out and keep trying and everything like that, but, I mean, I think going forward, you just say, your grandfather going forward, and we're not gonna allow any more glass, beer bacon and cheese and Oktoberfest.
Are they doing glasses for the wine works now too?
Oh, I don't know, good question, I don't know. That comes up in my questions later.
Because I know that that's not even something new that's been added, so I think there might be events that are having glass that maybe the board isn't aware of, so I just thought I'd bring it to your attention. If glass is something the board is concerned about, if they're not, I see the reasoning behind allowing plastic only, but.
Well, here's what we do, when we go to all the bars on the weekends and we remind them, no glass goes down to the bars, and that's what we do. And they've been all pretty much good. Clemens has a little bit, people take them outside and then they have a tendency to lose track of them. But for the most part, all the bars are pretty good about, if you got something going outside, it's in a plastic cup. And so knock on wood, that hasn't been a big issue. And I can tell you firsthand from cleaning up the beer tent, from volunteering with swim teams and everything, there's very, very few glasses that get broken there. I mean, people are paying $20 a glass, they're not breaking them, and if they are, it's usually an accident. I mean, our concern is people throwing themselves, bottles, glasses, but when you're getting those mugs or the souvenir stuff, people just don't do it, so. But, you know, like I said, going forward, maybe that's what we do, we just say no more glass unless you've been grandfathered, and that's it.
The Stein's a little different than allowing glass bottles.
Right,
things like
right,
that.
right, or
People aren't-
barware.
That people aren't attached to.
Right, right. Souvenir, maybe, yeah, maybe the difference needs to be it's a souvenir,
Right.
souvenir style.
Or be, cover the wine walks too.
Right, which would then cover the wine walks too.
Well, we would want them to make us aware of that through the application process, that they would like to have these available.
Well, the other
Yes.
thing you do run into though too, is that's a good point, is sometimes they'll go in and buy a beer stein from one of the gift shops, you know, it's a $40, $50 beer stein, and they'll come out and drink in that. And again, from our perspective, that's never been a problem. It's just the bars and keeping the drink glasses and the bottles, primarily bottles. And not only that, the bottles and the other cheap glass, they end up in people's flower pots, they end up in the alleyways, they end up behind the outhouses, they end up.
I live it.
You never find a $20 mug in your flower
I
pot.
have not, I have not, you're right, or in my mailbox, because I
Right.
have found the other. Oh, yeah.
So I guess, just to ask the main question again of the board, is the board comfortable with the 150 late fee that's in here as written? Or would the board prefer to not have the late fee as an option and that it's denied?
How much is the application fee?
Oh, I think it's, no, it's 35. I think it's 35.
I would say $150 minimum.
I think the late fee needs to stay, it needs, we need to stop this, and they need to get a minimum time, and,
There's gonna be some people that say, oh my God, $150? Well, then don't do it.
right.
Yeah, and do it, take the responsibility and.
Exactly.
Because, you know, when you're on the clock
That's
and
been the
you're
problem. I
checking.
mean, I'd make it $150 a day, you know, if that's their, if that's their idea of following the rule. I mean, at some point, people just have to be responsible.
Exactly, yeah. Common sense is a rare commodity. Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
So then if it's less than 2 months, but obviously 3 weeks is nothing, you can't apply at all, but less than 2 months, then we charge them the 150 in addition to the 35.
Right.
So, maybe I misunderstood. Were you going to send this back out again, or is this up for?
I think,
Is this up for
I think,
tonight?
I think the only thing the board has to act on is creating the $150 late fee. The permit is in and of itself, I kind of view as an administrative function that we can clarify things throughout it as we need to. That the board doesn't have to approve the permit every time clarification occurs. So the only action I would like to see the board take is to establish the $150 late fee, because
Okay,
that doesn't exist yet.
What does this, just for my clarification, what does this come under? An ordinance or a resolution or what?
Do we pass all fees in a resolution, Lynn? We have a fee schedule?
We
Does that
generally do
include the
pass
application?
fees as a resolution. Yeah, so we
So-
can, I mean, I know you
You
generally. It's
don't
in the
necessarily.
minutes,
but if-
it's,
But if we do a resolution, we need a, well, if we, no matter what we do, don't we need to make this binding? Don't we need to publish and approve?
A fee? I don't
we
believe
don't
we
need
have
to
to
publish
publish.
unless it's an
But we're
ordinance. If it's an
changing,
ordinance, then.
but we're changing more than the fee. We're changing the timeline, right?
Yeah, we.
The application.
Timeline and application have never been part of the resolution.
Or an ordinance.
Well, so what are they?
It's.
I mean, what
Form.
makes them
It's
legally
action by
binding?
the, well, it was action by the board accepting that form.
Okay.
So. I
Accepting
mean,
that
we-
one exists.
Yeah, so we can, I mean, I guess if you want to do the fee resolution, we can
bring that
you
back.
know.
No, I'm just asking, I don't, I don't know the intricacies of,
The motion by the
Municipal
board
law.
would be binding. So a resolution is just a document that's approved by a motion.
okay, well, just say that we approve this as it's written. Then it just becomes a matter of, somebody comes in, questions it, we just say, no, this is what the board said.
Policy as set by the village board.
There you go. And that's all that's needed in the event that someone questions it.
Yeah, questions why they
We
need
wouldn't
that.
want to do an ordinance, I don't think, on something like that.
Makes sense.
I had one other question in here though on the fees, if that's all right.
Mm-hmm.
On the very end, it had for the police thing, so the police wages, it says security safety for the event, it's on page 30. This has, it says that views charge at current loaded wage. In the past, we've used a flat fee of $40 an hour per officer for the police coverage out there. And we were gonna increase that this year to $45 an hour. I think that's an easier for us to figure. It's probably easier administratively to figure, and it's probably easier for the applicants because they know what it's gonna cost them per hour versus if I get a part-timer at $17 an hour and I get a part-timer from Belleville at $21 an hour and I have to pay two guys here on overtime at $34, $35, or $40 an hour. I think at the end, we always come out ahead on it already at $40 an hour, and I think we will continue to at 45 an hour. But I think it's just cleaner and easier for everybody to use a fixed fee on that and go forward.
My question to the board for that would be, if the board's intent would be to run at a profit for the charge of using officers, or if we want to just add a break-even amount. So at the flat fee, if we're not charging our actual costs, then the flat fee could result in the policy creating additional revenue. So it's not just covering the costs of putting an officer out there, but it's generating revenue at the expense of the applicant. Now they're at the flat rate, that we could come out ahead, we could come out behind, depending on what
Typically
happens.
come on ahead.
But we historically have come out ahead.
Can we just charge an actual cost?
Is there anything prohibiting us from charging?
I'm just thinking that, number one, you're not out anything. I mean, you're not making anything. I mean, let's face it, when they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars on these festivals, if we come out ahead, $500 on wages for police services, but I mean, that includes, and then where do you break it out? Do I charge for the car? Because I drove the car over here and do we charge miles? And to me, the flat fee at $40 or $45 an hour is all encompassing. You get the car, if we gotta go here, we go there. If we gotta do traffic for this, we do that. And all that money goes back into the general fund. It doesn't come back into our wages, so it's not like the police department's making money. To me, it's a flat fee that the village charges for these permits for that coverage.
Do you ever run into a deficit? You said you make a little bit of money on that, but do we ever run into a deficit where it kind of just evens out? Like 45 would be, one festival as opposed to another.
And I said, and let me just back, we've always used 40, but then the officers got a pretty good sized wage increase. And to compensate for that is why I suggest we go to 45 an hour.
What do you think of 50? I mean, just to cover our trails.
I think 50 we're pushing. I mean, all the event organizers understand it. And they understand that they need it. But the other thing is keep in mind, here's the other thing I have to break down. I might have two officers on straight wages. So they might only be costing $25 an hour, but we're still billing at $40, $45 an hour. So,
That's without benefits too.
no, if they're
Yeah,
making
and
$22 an hour, so they're 25, 26 with
Gas
benefits.
for the car and everything. else.
Then, so to me, it's just cleaner, a flat fee. They know if they're gonna do beer, bacon, and cheese on a Saturday afternoon, they're gonna have 4 cops, $45 an hour, $180 an hour. They're paying for that. 180 times 8, they're gonna spend just over $1,000 for police coverage. Done, forward. And it's easier for them because they just get one bill, they can budget for it. When they do their operating budget, they know up front.
Is there an issue?
Is that part of what we're discussing here, or?
It was just a question I had through the whole thing.
At the
We can certainly specify in that it will be charged at $45 an hour. We can specify that in the permit, rather than the fully loaded wage.
Okay, okay.
I agree with that, let's do the flat 45.
And how all that came about was, before I was a chief, they didn't charge anything for it. They just had officers down there. So to me, I'm looking at it kind of like a business, that if they're gonna run these things and they're gonna make all this money, why should we strap the taxpayer in the village for that extra coverage? So when we came out with it, and at the end of the day, if we make a couple bucks off it, so be it. It's no different than, you know, having an event at the pool or renting a pool to somebody or doing this. The last question I had in here, Drake, is for these streets and these closures and everything, can we have them right in there that they submit a map with the closures they want?
Yes.
Just so we know.
That would be very helpful with that.
On number 2, location of the event, it does say, please attach a detailed map or
Okay,
diagram.
I missed that then, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. I was looking at page 28 and 29.
I've always seen some form of.
They typically do.
And some do and some don't, and some where they haven't, I've had to draw out an outline and see
Right.
what's gonna be blacked off.
Okay.
And then try and
So you
figure it
know
in my
what's
mind,
going on.
yeah.
We can add map of the event to the required items as well on the checklist for special permit application.
But, I'm lost here.
If you flip,
Bottom of page 27.
Yeah, location of the event.
Yep.
Please attach a detailed map.
Right, but they're gonna add it
We can
also
put it on
to the
page
list of
25.
required
If you go to-
items on page.
of your packet, page 25, this goes out with them to give them kind of a
I
checklist to help
see.
them make sure that they have
So-
everything.
Okay,
So we could add it there so that they can check themselves.
yeah, okay. I mean, because, whatever.
I started the St. Patty's Day Parade down the road 20 years ago, and they demanded that I have that 20 years ago.
Yeah, we started using
Good idea.
the checklist because some applicants would
Well, I was
say they
just
got.
lost because I see it is a requirement. So there's another case where, okay, they submit an application by the checklist,
Yeah, we're-
and they don't have the map, and they say, gotta come back. Okay, I get it, add it.
Is there something in there where revenue generated from the police department can be back to the police department?
No, that's all
Yeah.
general fund.
Revenue always comes in revenue in the general fund. So whenever revenue, it's just revenue in, whenever the village takes in revenue. So any department that gets a grant, that revenue goes to the general fund.
And then the board just decides where they want to.
It goes into undesignated, yeah. So it just counts as part of the balanced budget. And that's an accounting principle. It's not something, that's true across municipalities.
The only other thing on there too was 200 attendees, is that low? I mean, I think if we're gonna do an emergency action plan for all these, that we maybe increase that, because.
Well, it'd be for 200 and above. If you have more than 200 attendees, you need an emergency operations plan.
Okay, but when they get a permit for like that wine walk, that's over 200 people.
They would need an emergency.
Well, wine
operations-
walks don't have special event
Oh,
permits.
that's right.
Oh, okay, it's just that's an alcohol permit, not a
And it's,
special.
they don't take alcohol out in the street. It's from one licensed location to another.
Yes, they do.
Oh, I didn't know
Well,
that. I don't know that.
So they don't have
That's why it's a wine walk.
Their license doesn't include being out on the street.
Their alcohol license doesn't extend to the street.
Oh, that's good to know.
No, but
Didn't know that. Everybody's walking around with wine.
they're walking around with wine. Okay, whether that's allowed or not, they're doing it, so.
We've seen it. I mean, I quite honestly, I thought that was a whole part of the permit.
So did I.
I think maybe we should
So
clarify
did
that.
That would be them
You
changing
might
their
want to make a
alcohol
change there
license.
and whatever the,
Well, that's Chuck, why I thought that led into a special permit, because they're out walking with glasses of
I
wine.
just assumed they did.
I did too.
That would,
That's $200 a
That would be
glass of
them.
wine walking down the
there,
street.
that would,
I'm glad I came in.
Ching, ching, ching.
Let's put that on.
that would involve them changing their alcohol license.
Each individual business would have to change their alcohol license in order to.
The sponsor,
Unless they make it a
It can
special
get-
permit, a special event.
No, because that's not our regulation.
I don't think each
The
individual.
DEA advises us on circumstances or
Those licenses should know.
Is that a complication to change that license?
I think,
the people holding the license should know what their liability is if they're not operating under what their license allows them to
And that's
do.
this weekend.
Who did?
Yeah, I know.
Oh, that's right, it is.
Well, and that is all, the wine license,
Yeah.
the wine walk
I'll
this
tell my wife
weekend,
to make sure she drinks it
is
in
only
the
being served
establishment.
at currently licensed establishments. So there are, nobody without a current wine license is serving alcohol. So those people definitely should know, because that's part of their alcohol license, not allowing anything out in the street.
Who organizes the event?
The one this weekend
Have to check the
was,
list.
isn't it the Chalet?
no,
No.
They were in there.
Oh, they had,
it was either William
William
Tell
Tell, I
or.
think.
But shouldn't they,
I know who I
It's hiding.
It's Heidi.
It's
Yeah.
shouldn't it be their
Yeah.
responsibility of informing the
Yes.
people, the establishments?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and apparently.
And I guess we'll just have to remind
Well,
them
they
as
should
part of,
know, yeah.
yeah, what we
it's
type up, we'll
the
have to.
participants. that
Should
don't
better
know.
job of
yeah.
reminding them.
So they can walk with their wine glass without wine in it?
Right,
Mhm.
right, and empty
That
glass.
would clear.
Yeah, so,
I think it
So-
defeats the purpose of a wine
So
walk,
let's
it
get out
should be
in
a
the
wine
streets
tasting
and release
event,
it, Chuck.
because everybody else thinks it's a
Yeah.
walk.
Yeah, I concur.
staying home.
Just that by name,
Right.
it's
Right.
kind of
Right.
implying that, yeah, you can
Right.
walk around.
A wine tasting, you go to this place and taste, and that place and taste, and this. A walk, you're taking it with you, like walking the dog.
And it's not plastic, so we've already defined.
That's a state law, that's a state law, we have no control over what
Mhm.
they named it and how they authorized it, so.
Right. But I think that there's a portion of responsibility that falls in the lap of the organizers too,
Yeah, and we'll
So
have
let
that.
people know.
That's
It's a little off topic, but it's come up before where organizers of wine walks have asked to store wine at Village Hall while they're preparing, and the license even says where you can store the wine, so we have had to tell them, no, you can't store any alcohol here.
why would they want to store it here?
That was for the chalet,
Oh, I see, okay, okay, got it.
but it wasn't allowed.
And we seek the counsel of our local is it agent, DEA agent,
Yeah,
to
The
to answer
alcohol,
these
tobacco,
questions.
firearms.
Alcohol,
Jason-
sorry, ATF.
Yeah, Jason Lee.
Okay, well, that's not part of this.
No.
Read the police report Monday. There's gonna be a lot of entries.
Okay.
So,
It's gonna turn into a game, how many times can you say first?
so we pretty much agreed on everything here with the permit change? Bringing this back to,
Yeah, I think the last thing we were talking about was the price, the fee.
The late fee, yep, and that's what we needed to approve, everything else is policy. So I will make a motion to go ahead and add the $150 late fee to the special event permit application.
Second.
Any more discussion?
wait, why is that separate from?
It doesn't need to be.
No,
Okay, did I word that wrong? I apologize. I can amend my.
all right, but in
motion.
paragraph 2, okay, is that the same as what we have done prior, with the exception of the $150 late fee? Because I don't believe it is.
No, the dates.
No.
No, it's a new paragraph.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would like to amend my motion to state
Just withdraw
that-
your motion and make it.
I'll withdraw my motion then, please. I would like to make a new motion to go ahead and, accept all of the changes that were made in this special event permit, including the times for application and the $150 late fee.
I'll second.
Well,
And you seconded the,
he seconded it. Yeah, and the reason why a little bit puzzled is, what else are we changing?
The wording, so it,
Here's a copy.
the old one, yeah.
No, I can see that.
Oh, okay.
And so I see the $150, late fee is the only thing that's being changed.
No.
But
that
no, we
whole
also
paragraph
changed
is
we added the 6 month, no,
6
No,
months.
that's already there,
Already where?
6 months.
that paragraph
here.
was added.
Yeah,
Right, that's an
Yeah.
addition. If
This
you
is
looked at
new.
the old,
This is new.
if you looked at the old permit, you wouldn't see that paragraph.
oh, but aren't we, oh, I see, so we're adapting this. as-
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, that's-
Okay, now I am.
Okay.
That's why I like.
I mean,
things that are
there
in
there are other, there's other changes throughout the formatting of it, but they're not policy changes, so it's simply the organization of it, to make it clear for where they fill things out and whatnot, so it's not substantive changes.
Do we want to throw that in there real quick too?
If you want to. On page 28, you might want to add for the parks, Osley Pond Park.
I just don't know too many events that are out there, but.
Well,
I would say that there are, if you find small errors and things like that, there's things that we can correct administratively if they don't change the spirit of or violate the policy that's being set by the board. There's things that we can change without having it to be approved because it's not changing the intent of the board. So like if I reworded a sentence and it was just a clarifier and it still meant what you're trying to meet, then it would.
Breaking the new chairs already?
I guess I don't go back that far.
Where'd you sit back there for
Yep. Mike, sit down, we gotta vote yet.
Yep, I saw you circled that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
Yeah, Bert brought up a good point. So are we adopting this as a whole? Approving this as a whole, then we should add Holding Park.
But Drake just said he can make them changes anytime,
Yeah.
administrative.
I mean, so you are approving the application. If there are spelling errors or things of that sort, and an inadvertent omission of a park, I would think that administratively the board would allow me to make those corrections. So you can approve the special event permit as written, but I don't think the board wants me to bring it back every time.
No, but what, can't we do that right now? Can't we?
Certain.
Tammy,
With requested changes.
Okay.
withdraw her motion and make a new motion.
Absolutely.
As she did with the inclusion of Hosley Park
Okay.
as a
Well,
location.
then are we including the PD at $45 an hour?
Yeah, I
didn't do
think we
that
should.
either.
Okay.
I mean, if you're
Just-
like every
I would just
detail.
say that a motion to approve the special event application as discussed.
I would like to withdraw my previous motion, and I would like to make a new motion to go ahead and approve this special event application permit, as we've discussed.
I'll second that.
They even regret asking this question. Any further discussion? Chuck, you got a question mark on the top of your forehead.
Well,
I can see it from here.
As we discussed, does that
So,
direct
It
train
means-
to include Hosley Park on here?
Yes.
yes,
Because they've added it.
And 45.
and the 45 and the 150 lake.
We can specifically list it in the motion. So the addition of the $45 per hour for the charging of the officers and the addition of Hosley Park underneath the parks.
That was very simple, wasn't it? Let's put it in the motion.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. The only thing on the president's report, I don't know if you're all aware, but we lost a business in town. Mickey's Diapers has been sold and gone, as far as I know. There are some people looking at the property of the building, so.
But we gained the business.
Yes, Yeah,
Were they just relocating?
some Chicago company bought them, that's all I know.
And we did the county send contact information to the chamber, who is reaching out to employees that were laid off for resources that may be available to them.
How many employees did they have? Full-time?
I don't know.
I've heard some people say 9, and I've heard some people say 20, so.
I would say more towards 20 maybe.
They had a lot of part-time,
They had a lot of part-time
Right.
kids.
trying to be flexible.
Right.
Over by home.
Retired people.
Yeah.
So,
Well, the facility would be the important thing, I think.
yeah, yeah. So, any further business? Hearing none, we are adjourned.